It's me, a dad who games, returning for another installment of Sims Homes of the 20th Century with a 1920s bungalow. I never actually knew what constituted a bungalow, but after some basic research, I realized that it is one of the most common styles of home in my community. It's simply a primarily single-story home with a small upstairs and the roof that peeks out through the front of the house. Sometimes the visible upstairs windows are narrow, but they can also be full windows. And with our colonial and Victorian neighbors looking on, we begin the bungalow. In all honesty, from here on out, homes throughout the century kind of lose a lot of the intricate beauty found in Victorians and Colonials. So I'm going to try my best to make subsequent decade builds to be as interesting as possible. That being said, the moment I saw the images that accompanied my bungalow Google search, only one thing came to mind. Biff Tannen's house from Back to the Future, which, as a matter of fact, last sold for $1.5 million. And to boot, the same goes for all of the fictional Lyons Estates homes used in the movie. They're all legitimately in the same neighborhood. That's insane. Which honestly, there isn't much more to say about the house design. It's a bungalow. Because their designs are so simple, it didn't take me long to come up with the shell. I saw early on that working on the inside of the top floor would be annoying with the roof, but I figured I'd worry about that later in the build. Consequently, the ease with which I made the shell led me to my always time-consuming external designing. I had to use the Pets game pack set of windows and doors because most bungalow images I saw had these exact windows. Granted, the color options are pretty weak, but I couldn't drop these windows. I mean, they're like meant for bungalows. So is that like a thing? If you're a pet owner, you gotta have a bungalow? Maybe it's just coincidence that it's the only kind of windows that came with the Cats and Doll game pack. I don't know. What do you think? And the same goes for these columns. They're bungalow columns for all I'm concerned. I pretty much based the entire house design on these columns and windows. Thankfully though, the windows I selected have a whole slew of variations, so I had to use them all. Also, I actually dropped my usual approach of using columns to accentuate the edges of the house because the siding I selected had the end caps. Sometimes they are a little screwy, but they actually worked with this design. But I mean, it's a pretty basic house, nothing really extravagant at all. It's a house. Actually, doing all of these builds reminds me that weird experience of buying a car. Like, you see a car that you think to yourself is unique and new, and then you drive off and realize that the car is everywhere. You only now notice it because you're now aware of it. Same goes for these homes. I'm now like, oh look, there's a colonial. Ooh, that one's a bungalow. Let me know in the comments if you've experienced this. My house is actually a bungalow, and I got some parallel universe vibes building this house because it has many aspects that remind me of my own home. I'm not about to be doing that. I did make my house one time, but I never shared it. I don't want anybody knowing what my house looks like. Get all those creepers stalking me. Yeah, right. I ended up tackling the landscaping before the inside because I didn't really have anything special in mind for it. Yards really downgraded through the decades. Things started to become more traditional with only a few scattered trees to decorate green grass. After my usual seasoning with the bushes, I tried emulating roots for the first time by using the landscaping tool and raising up only the areas beneath the trees, and then coloring them with dirt. That's actually an important real-life lesson. Your trees need to breathe. Our Japanese maple died because the previous owners covered up the roots with mulch. You're supposed to see the roots reaching into the ground, or else you run the risk of having them suffocate. So, don't suffocate your trees. I peppered the outside with flowers here and there, and enjoyed a little ground blending. And you'll notice that I don't use floor tiles for making the pathway stones because, as I've mentioned in previous videos, they make the paths too perfect. And blending dirt over the stones creates a nice realistic effect that finishes off the landscaping nicely. That's why I also put what will be the grilling area away from the house. You should never have your grill next to a house. It's a fire hazard. which I'm still new to playing live mode, and I'm always still paranoid that my Sims are going to cause fires, because I always watch Call Me Kevin and Grace Still Plays, and fires always happen. Once I'm happy with the large landscaping details, it's time to get the flower game going. Oopsie daisies are great for adding irregular flower patterns. Again, real life is never perfect. You need some chaos. These flowers are also really great for adding some depth of detail beneath the trees, along with some additional ground blending with the patchy grass swatch. It helps emulate roofs. I really enjoy using different sized layers of plants when I'm doing landscaping. While I was outside, I decided to finish off the house with outdoor furniture, and I really didn't know what period-specific furniture to use, so I just focused on making sure that everything maintained the same color scheme. I also had some issue with sim pathing before, so I really made sure to keep this in mind when placing assets. Because Biff lived with his grandma, I wanted to see lots of plants. Grandmas have plants. It's like what they do. Ah, but Biff. I absolutely love the Back to the Future series of movies. I honestly think I became a little obsessed with them. And, well, actually, Back to the Future 2 was my catalyst to take an interest in writing. I remember being at the old computer my dad had built from a kit, staring at the blue screen of WordPerfect, writing a narrative adaptation of the movie. But me being a kid, I was already censoring myself from foul language. Like Biff says at the start of the movie, "What the hell is going on here?" as the DeLorean takes flight to go into the future. I replaced hell with heck. I wasn't supposed to use that kind of language. I really wanted to load up the front porch with flowers. I think I was tapping into my country style vibes with them. It just seemed fitting here with how plain the landscaping became. There are so many great packs for The Sims, and I take advantage of all the great assets from Laundry Day. These long flower boxes are insanely beautiful. Designing the inside really became what I contemplated throughout the build because I really didn't know what I wanted. I pretty much just imagined what Biff's house would look like on the inside. Again, it's a grandma's house, so I tried to channel classic grandma vibes while maintaining a conglomerate of the previous decades. It's really an evolution when we're talking about houses through the decades. Certain aspects remain from the previous generations, and that was my mindset with designing the inside. When I first think about the 1920s, like most people, I usually phrase it as the Roaring Twenties. I imagine bob haircuts, swing dancing, prohibition. Well, pretty much The Great Gatsby is an iconic representation of this image of the decade. But it wasn't all roaring. There were normal people with normal houses, too. As a result, I made a point of not channeling The Great Gatsby and tried to figure out a design that I thought would make the most sense for normal people in the 1920s. Still, it's just me having fun making it look nice. I wasn't totally sure what I was going to do in the kitchen, but when in doubt, make it generic. However, once the tables were in place, the color match made it all work. Granted, this furniture screams country living, and that's why I just went with it for most of this room. The rest of the designing just became a game of defining and maintaining the same color scheme, and we all know that rabbit hole. So don't get me wrong, you're only seeing a fraction of the time it took me to ultimately commit. I just knew that we had to have a radio and no television. It wasn't invented until the end of the decade. Flowers and country living go hand in hand, as so too does the Laundry Day pack. But please, don't knock me on the decade accuracy here. I mean, it's not like I can travel through time. And don't get me started on the concept of time travel. It's absolutely impossible to travel through something that doesn't even really exist. We invented time to keep track of how the seasons change, and for sake of keeping track of human existence. It's not something that's tangible. Oh god, no existential babbling in a Sim speed build video. So let's talk about furniture. At this point, I'm just populating space with my favorite go-to surfaces. But honestly, this might be the last time I use them in this series. The 1930s started to become a bit more modern by today's standards. If time travel were possible, which again, it's not possible, but if it were, I probably really want to go back any further than the 1930s. Actually, I wouldn't want to go back to any other era than right now. Going back in time would only set back all the ground we've made, and we've got a hell of a lot more to cover. Nah, let's keep the past in pictures. You'll also notice that I completely forgot the refrigerator and had to quickly rearrange the kitchen. The bedroom in this single-person couple house probably took me the longest to design because I really wanted to pick the best combination of assets to achieve the mishmash of styles I was blending. I absolutely love the pirate floors from Get Famous. They are so natural looking, and every time I placed them, the rooms just seemed to come to life. The bathroom became a bathroom with all the basic components, all trying to match the tile color and style until a fully functional bathroom was established. And because it's the only bathroom, I got to populate it with all my favorite bathroom accessories. And a bench. I don't know why I always like putting them in bathrooms. I guess I just imagined someone needing a seat while getting dressed. I don't know. I just like them in bathrooms. I took full advantage of all the new curtain swatch colors they put into the game and made sure that they all matched before tackling the final room upstairs. Which, with all the main rooms accounted for, this upper floor became where all activities and skills could be kept. AKA, it's a study. Well, there's not really much more to say about this build. I'm really happy with the way it turned out, and it kept me thinking about Biff, and how awesome of a character he was in one of my all-time favorite movie series. And with the final room complete, so does our build come to an end. I'm so happy that you've been joining me for this journey through the decades. Watching as my subscriber count increases is an absolute joy, so don't forget to subscribe. I make Sims 4 content all the time, so be sure to check out what else I have to offer. Please follow me on Twitter and catch me live on Twitch as well. Again, thank you for watching. I'll see you in my next video, but until then and until the next, have a day.